our focus of discussion for today is all about the analysis of documentary evidence by Judith Bell on her book, Doing a Research Project, a guide for first-time researchers, McGraw-Hill Education, UK. Documentary analysis will be used to supplement information obtained by other methods. So that is the mere importance of documentary analysis. It serves as a material or supplementary material to further improve previous evidences, researchers, or even literatures. You need supplementary evidence to further establish reliability on surveys. Remember our discussion on reliability, wherein you need to conduct further repetitions of your procedures, or you may do 2 or more methods in line with your research. No? So you need to conduct those. And likewise on case study, wherein this type of research is actually questionnaire based. So the lack of access to research subjects may be frustrating, but documentary analysis of educational files and records can prove to be an extremely valuable alternative source of data. So this is from Johnson, 1984, again on the textbook of Judith Bell. This is done especially when the subjects for research are not on the area anymore. Example, students are not anymore enrolled on the school. So let's say your target number of students last year on your research is 1,000, and then on this year you want to plan also the same type of research, but then again there was a decrease in the number of students due to some of them transferred or really stop on their education. So that might give you some constraints in line with your finishing your research. So with that, documentary analysis or keeping records. So when we speak of documentary analysis, one way of it is actually keeping record, keeping tracks of the evidences. The nature of documentary evidence. So during the document search, it is helpful to clarify exactly what kinds of documents exist. So you need to have a categories or categorization in line with the type of documents that you are looking for. Syempre, that would be in line. Absolutely, that would be in line with the topic that you are looking for. So in general, document is termed as an impression left on a physical object by a human being. So it is something tangible, can be touched, can be read by researchers or some students, of course. Research can involve the analysis of photographs, films, CD-ROMs, video slides, and other non-written sources, all of which can be classed as documents. But the most common kinds of documents in research, both on education and medical research, that would be through written as printed or manuscript. So nowadays, the very popular on looking for documentary evidence literature would be e-journal. So these are works of researchers that they need to look on publishers online, likewise, to print and make their research available on the internet, because it's the most in demand and that's the most easiest way for researchers to look on their material or on their data. Increasingly, records are kept in electronic form, such as what I've discussed a while ago. Nowadays there are publishers, editors that are highly available online. But the scholarly approach to this is the same. So during my college years, wherein we need to go to public libraries to get hard and printed materials of literatures. I mean, really, the related literature part is the hardest part on our research is due to we need to look on libraries. We need to go from 1 to uh, 10 libraries to finish our related literatures. But nowadays, the internet, um, online publishers, online journals makes our related literature highly available and easily gives an access to those who are finishing their research. So it's not really that hard anymore to look on our literature, likewise on our documentary evidence. Sources can also be quantitative or statistical in nature, but it would be mistaken, of course, to regard these so-called hard sources of evidence as being more reliable than other kinds of materials. It is vitally important to employ the recommended critical method of analysis to check how the figures have been produced, what has been counted, how correctly, by whom, when, where, and why. So this is where documentary evidence will supplement our related literature, because we need really hard evidences, printed materials in line with our related literatures, specifically when you are writing your paper and most of your related literatures are actually coming from the internet or e-journals. But actually, it's okay if most of your sources, most of your references are coming from the internet, because they are actually valid. They are published, and really most of the authors paid just to make their research available online, so that is really legit, genuine, and very valid source of data. But during the early times, such as 1990s, 80s, we really need to have hard evidence to really prove and to serve as our related literature. But nowadays, documentary evidences serves only as a supplementary material, because that's it. We have the internet and e-journals that could provide us a lot of related literature. Now we have two different approaches to the nature of documentary evidence. One has been so-called the source-oriented approach, in which you let the nature of the sources determine your project and help you generate questions for your research. So the feasibility of the project would be determined by the nature of extant sources, so that a particularly full collection of material, for example, the researcher is part of or is well known of the materials. Sometimes the author itself should be part of the population to be studied, like for example on ethnic group, on a community. The author should be a member or part of, or really dwelled all through the process of the research. Subject of research knows all the possible problems of the area. So we speak of the first approach to this source-oriented approach, wherein the author should be well informed and he or she should have enough information about the population, the problem, the environment, the habitat of the study that he wants to be part of. Example, in education, the researcher should be the teacher, because the teacher is part of the entire education system. The student, of course, can be part of that. So you can be, you are well informed on the problems that are actually arising on the university or on the institution where you belong. And then likewise, a principal could be the part of the educational source-oriented approach. And then some other staffs in the school that could be a researcher, and likewise knows a lot of things, knows a lot of problems that is actually arising inside the school, inside the university, that needs answers, no? In terms of research and needs documentary evidence. Now, while the approach is much more common, way of proceeding would employ the problem-oriented approach, which involves formulating first the questions by using other research methods and by reading secondary sources. So the difference between the two is that the source-oriented is that the researcher should be part of the environment first or of the institution, whether it would be education by origin, scientific research, medicine, agriculture. So the author or the researcher should be part of that institution first, and then might be all throughout his experience on that institution, he might be able to see some problems, some possible arising problems in the future on that particular institution. Whereas on the second approach is that the researcher looks on the possible problem, whether it would not be observable yet, but then again, he tries to look on some problems. So you find a problem first before researching for other sources. So that's the difference between the two. The first one, there is no problem yet, while the second approach is that you look on possible problems on that particular institution. Now, this method investigates what has already been discovered, that's the second one, about the subject before establishing the focus of the study, and then researching the relevant primary sources. These terms are defined below. So, which means on the second approach, there is already a study, a previous study, and then the researcher further improves what is currently available on that particular institution. So, document searchers need to be carried out in exactly the same way as literature. So, it's just the same. When you try to look on literature, it should be systematic. It should be well aligned on your topic, and the difference is that most of the related literatures are highly available in the internet. Whereas when we speak of documentary evidence, that's it. You need to go to the institution, sometimes on the library. If you are actually medicine or scientific research in background, you need to go on some other institutions such as BOST, Bureau of Fisheries, Bureau of Agrarian Reform. It depends on the focus of your study. So when we speak of documentary evidence, you really need to go through, to the institution itself and provide you with hard evidences that they actually kept. So that's it. The document search may have to cover both local and national sources of evidence. Sometimes apart from the related literature that are highly available in the internet, some of the publishers are actually highly advising most of the researchers to acquire hard evidences from institutions, such as when you are trying to look on heavy metals, they are actually asking you heavy metals. Let's say you are just like on my case, my first research was actually heavy metals found on the mussels or of tahong, Philippine green mussels. So the publishers asked me to look for previous study, and they asked me to go to some institution which gives previous studies about Philippine green mussels on that same location. So on my case, my location is actually Navotas. So I need to go to the Bureau of Fisheries near to Navotas and gives me hard evidences on previous studies that they kept on their institution. So that's it. Sometimes the publisher really asks you for hard evidences. National records have proliferated since the advent of a national educational system and the introduction of the National Health Service. And it is important to decide what official sources are needed for a particular local project. Such sources can be published and unpublished. Like for example, on my experience on Philippine green mussels, when we have this chance to talk on Philippine Coast Guards, they really have this monthly monitoring about the toxicity of water in Manila Bay. It's just that they don't have this chance to publish their works because they are not well educated enough on how to publish their data, because they are only focused on reading the toxicity, how to read that, keeping the record if there is a sudden increase on the toxicity level, and how the way they will do actions on it. But in line with publishing their works, they are not really well informed on how to publish their data. So with that, in line with that, they are encouraging master's degree holders such as us on the case of environmental science master's degree holder. Although I am not yet done with my thesis, I'm now on my thesis proposal. They are asking us to enter the Philippine Coast Guard as a researcher, because they don't have that particular group which will publish their work. So they are actually inviting us to be part of the Philippine Coast Guard. But then again, since I'm not yet finished with my thesis, I'm not yet qualified to do as such. So such a project on a curriculum development in a school or local authority, or one on the role of district nurses in an area, may require a role of government green papers, white papers, guidance papers, government statistics, office for standards education. Actually, this reports, surveys, questionnaires, even simple records such as on the prefect, minor and major offenses. We use this one when we have our PASCO accreditation. And that's why keeping hard evidences or records even from the moment that we begin is really a vital role on applying for an accreditation. So just this 2016, way back 2016, when we do the accreditation, it's just that particular year when we realized that keeping records, even taking pictures of events such as stargazing, taking pictures of the projects of the students are actually hard evidence that this particular accrediting body requires from those schools, just like us, that we need to have this accreditation so we could be leveled with those schools which is on the accreditation level number 3, number 4. We are not yet, but successfully we are accredited level number 2. Okay, but to go to accreditation level number 3, we need to apply it again, we need to have a lot of hard evidences again that we need to prepare. Okay, remember on that area, if you remember or if you are part of the university during the time of the accreditation, that part of classroom near to the faculty room, it serves as the exhibit area where all of the projects of the students, even my rocks coming from Bureau of Mines and Bureau of Mines only, my rocks and then the minerals are exhibited. Part of the exhibit, even those single project of the students, the seismograph, they collected it as a part of the exhibit wherein the PASCO accreditors asked us to present some of the projects of the students. Okay, so again, this hard evidences can serve as a great tool to really improve one institution. Okay, so the internet is an invaluable aid to locating official documents, but as a researcher, you must also be prepared to hunt down other sources for legal papers or official papers, such as, since we have Data Privacy Act in the Philippines, this makes it more difficult for researchers to look into local documents because some institutions, because I have a classmate in my masteral class where in his focus of study, he's actually an engineer. His focus of study is all about saving energy, and in line with that, I mean his thesis, in line with that, he needs to acquire a paper, a permit coming from Meralco. Meralco is one of the major energy provider or electricity provider here in the Philippines. So he needs to seek a legal paper wherein it indicates that he is allowed to observe the distribution of energy on a particular area. So when you try to look on legal papers, it's really hard nowadays because you really need to get some permits. Just like me, when I studied the Philippine Green Mussels or of the Tahong, my advisor asked me to seek first a permit from Philippine Coast Guard because I will take some pictures, and pictures are actually will state some vessels, huge vessels of Chinese vessels, Vietnamese vessels. Those names are actually on the picture that I took, so I really need to get a permit from Philippine Coast Guard and then Bureau of Fisheries, since I will get a sample from that area. So the DPA makes it hard right now for the researchers to get an official and sometimes legal paper. Okay? It can never be assumed, of course, that because documents exist, they will be available for research. Just like what I've said, some government agencies don't know yet how to publish their works, or might be they are not allowed yet to publish their works for some purpose like data secrecy or data privacy. So they only kept their record on hard printed format, but the risk of it is that when we have this flood, earthquakes, and might be some of these hard printed materials will be damaged. So that's the risk of keeping hard documents, no? Whereas when these institutions or the government institutions nowadays tries to print or publish their works and it is highly available on the internet, of course that would be highly for the researchers, it makes us easier for us to access those private data that they kept. Okay, so some sources may be regarded as too confidential to be released, so really we need to seek for some permits or letter. Okay, so inquiries would have to be made about access and availability at the local level. The nature of the project will lead you to a particular sources. In the National Health Service and medicine generally, there is a great emphasis on evidence-based research and the importance of documents along with the individual responsibility of staff for any records they create or use in the course of their duties. Like for example, in the case of the Sera, wherein they allow the body to be embalmed without knowing that the body itself will serve as an evidence for the toxicity. But then again, it was not really well preserved and was embalmed already, so which means it would not be a good hard evidence anymore as a proof for such crimes. I mean crimes done to the Sera. So since we don't have a given body, I mean institution who will conduct such thing to dead body, on how to process it as an evidence or a proof to proving such crimes. That's a big problem right now in the Philippines because we don't have that institution. Likewise, on the case of Nuesca, the police officer who killed right away 2 people. The thing is that since we have high accessibility to internet, the thing is everything that we do on our cell phones serves as an hard evidence. But the thing is, it could be edited. I'm not saying that the video on the police officer of Nuesca is edited, but the thing is, it could be on some cases. It could be edited. No, a lot of things can be done by internet nowadays, so we really need to be very cautious. People nowadays should know when and how to use the power of the internet, because might be it could be used against us, such as CCTV in the case of the Sera. It is not fully given to the internet. Only part of it are shown to the people. That's why it's totally publicly ridiculed. It's not private anymore, wherein the proper the right people, I mean the appropriate people to do the investigation cannot do it anymore with privacy, because it was easily leaked. It was leaked right away to the internet. Okay, so I'm not saying that the internet serves as a hindrance for this hard documents or evidences, but the thing is, it could act on the opposite way. So we should have this institution or a body in the or organization in the Philippines which will handle this type of evidences. Okay, now the National Health Services develop a code of practice on records management. This one is very important. I hope this will be integrated here in the Philippines, because this one is in America. Has developed a code of practice on records management which stipulates that each national health services organization is required to have an overall policy statement on how records are managed. I believe on the case of the Sarah, that's really what happened to her case, because the records, I mean, her body as an evidence was not really appropriately, um, not really tested, but well kept as an evidence itself. And this will be uh, your research project, or to some researchers, be helpful, be of great help to future researchers. Organizations are encouraged to establish a records. This is again not well implemented in the Philippines now. So establish a records inventory which will help the researcher to find out what health and non-health record exists in an institution. So for example, in the case of the Sarah, what really happened to her? I mean, where is the record? I mean, at no particular institution that should handle the case of, because it was only a policeman who handled her body. So according to Fortune, as I've watched the news, that is actually what is lacking in the Philippines, a given body or organization that will handle this type of incident or case. According to Fortune, we are not yet systematical on how we handle a body as an evidence or hard evidence on proving crimes in the Philippines. Okay, so I do hope it should be well implemented here because it will serve as a great help in the police organization. So minutes of meetings, memos, policy statement, and diaries, as well as clinical and caseload records, would be fruitful sources if they were available. Further ideas for projects are given by Walsh and Wiggins. So that would be my next slide. Actually, during PASCO accreditation, even minutes of the meetings are actually asked by the accreditors. If we are doing minutes of the meeting, and the minutes of the meeting are actually record that we are doing a meeting, okay, monthly meeting, weekly meeting. So it only shows that our university, I mean the department that we belong, the high school department and even the basic elementary department, are actually doing a monthly meeting. The monthly meeting is very important to really establish rapport towards the teachers, problems arising in the department that we need to address. Other programs that we can focus into monthly programs such as Buwan ng Wika, Science Month. What are the programs? What are the activities that we need to do on each month? So the minutes of the meeting is one of the requirement really by the accreditors. It's really important that we keep this minutes of the meeting because it shows that we really do meetings to improve our institution. Okay? Now, location of the documents. Government agencies, although it is not really that prominent here in the Philippines, because I myself experienced this hardship on looking local documents as I do my research on Taho. Government agencies should also provide guidance on dealing with local or hard documents. This will aid on dealing epidemic or when dealing with future problems such as right now, since we have pandemic. There should be an institution or again organization per local government, because this one is in America. I hope that this will be integrated here in the Philippines. There should be an organization or a department, per local government, let's say on Caloocan, that there should be a department there which keeps track or records of everything that is happening per year. So these records should be categorized in terms of health, in terms of agriculture, since right now there is a sudden increase on both meat, vegetables, so they could track what is the reason behind the sudden increase of commodities, basic commodities, and in line with this pandemic, what is a possible solution just in case it will happen again on the near future, or what are the programs of the Caloocan government agency. What is their program in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of community, in terms of agriculture during this time of pandemic. So as when the time comes, when this happen again, there is a pattern, not really a pattern, but it will serve as a guide for future researchers and even government agencies on what would be the proper way of handling this type of problem. Okay? So with lots of documents and evidence presented, there will be no more doubt for an approval giving body to stipulate new rules and regulations, because there are really hard evidence. So such research are very helpful to avoid further damages and problems on the future, such on the case of mutations of bacteria and viruses. Keeping tracks and records of this could help researchers and even scientists to really improve their way on vaccination or giving vaccines, just like what happened on dengue. A lot of children died due to this dengue vaccine. The issue is that the vaccine itself did not finish the entire stages for a vaccine to be fully implemented on people or on human being. What happened is that this children serves as a guinea pig, because there is no such thing as complete stage of dengue vaccine. Kaya I mean, those children that died due to this injected vaccine to them, they serve as a guinea pig, wherein therefore the scientists conclude that the dengue vaccine is not an effective vaccine. The hard part of that is the equivalent of the number of children that died due to this injection of the dengue vaccine. So again, this will serve as a hard evidence for the scientists that before we proceed to the injection of vaccines, we really need to complete the stages, wherein the last stage should be implementation to all types of races, be it Caucasian, Asian, to those people who have cancer, diabetes, because there should be an implementation, wide implementation to different races of people, so as to avoid mutation. Okay, so what if we try to inject it right away without finishing the stages? So what if on this particular race, this particular vaccine mutates? So that's again another problem that we need to solve, another vaccine that we need to formulate due to the bacteria or the virus mutates. Documents should be well kept, possibly by, for example, finance department and the local government, so they should have their own tracks or record. Minutes of the meeting keeper, record keeper for attendance, depending on the type of document that is needed to be kept. For example, on UE, we have food budget record, payment for the employer record, assessment of the employer record, civil status record. So I believe the HR department of the university, because I serve also as a I mean, I serve during the enrollment. I have a duty during the enrollment wherein I give um, certificate of good moral to the students of both senior high school and high school. To those who are transferees, all of their records coming from the principal's office. I serve during the enrollment, and I could see that the records in the principal's office are really well organized because I'm part of that. Okay, I'm part of those people who keep the records every year well organized, because I'm part of that people who separates and keep the records really well organized and systematically kept in the principal's office. Deliberate and inadvertent sources. Deliberate sources which are produced for the attention of future researchers. This would include autobiographies, memoirs of politicians, medical practitioners, or educationalists. Diaries are letters intended for later publication, documents for self-justification. In short, they involve a deliberate attempt to preserve evidence for future use. While inadvertent sources are used by researchers for some purpose other than that for which they were originally intended. For example, they are produced by the process of local and central government and from the everyday working of the health and educational system. So example of such primary documents from the education system include records of legislative bodies, government departments, agencies and local authorities, evidence from national databases, individual schools, inspection reports, national surveys, newspapers, and journals. These are again, etc. These are again number of teachers, number of students, number of books, number of publishers. These are actually well kept again on the Department of Education. So there will be a lot of department on that particular government agency of Department of Education in the Philippines. Okay, even budget, finance, that one, so they have a department for that. Example of documents from different bodies in the health institution. The summary care records of primary care trust, insurance department, hospital ward books, diaries of health workers, personal records, budgetary records, research project records, so on and so forth. So each government institution should have different departments to manage this type of records. Just like in the UE, we have academic records, we have prefect of discipline records. For the academic records, that is actually submitted to the division office of Caloocan where we belong actually. So all of which, even your Form 137, which is actually the most important paper of yours, are actually being well kept in the principal's office so as to be submitted to the division office of Caloocan. So those are actually really well kept inside the principal's office. Witting and unwitting evidence. Witting evidence is the information which the original author of the document wanted to impart. Unwitting evidence is everything else that can be learned from the document. Example are actually research about capillary action farming. All the necessary materials, process are revealed. So that's your witting evidence. Now, the unwitting evidence are those that is not printed on the manuscript, such as, can we use other plants? Can we use other fertilizers? No? So that is the perception of the reader. Okay? Or how the author uses some language that the reader interprets. Okay? So for example, since I only use fish manure, can we use, on the part of the reader, can I use carabao manure, human manure as a source of fertilizer? Okay, so that could lead to much further research of the future researcher. Next, the selection of documents. So the quantity of documentary you can study will inevitably be influenced by the amount of time that is available for this stage of your research. It is not usually possible to analyze everything. And so you must only decide what to select. Okay? So just like on the review of literature, so there should be a categories on how are you going to select your literature. So for example, on capillary action in Manila, what are the possible literature that you should be looking for? Of course, the type of plant, okay, that you are looking for. So you look for hard evidences on some. Also on that part, you go to Department of Agriculture, okay, because they know how to grow crops. And likewise on the different fertilizers that are actually being used. What if your fertilizer is something new and is not yet being used on the Department of Agriculture? So on that case, you are a new, and you are a new scientist in line with the Department of Agriculture. So try not to include too many deliberate sources, and take care not to select documents merely on the basis of how well they support your own views or hypothesis, because that is being so unfair. You try to look on other and a lot of sources. Your aim is to make as balanced a selection as possible, bearing in mind the constraints of time. So if time permits, you can still go on to other libraries or local institutions that will give you your hard evidence. Next would be content analysis. The proper selection of document is particularly important in what is termed as content analysis, which has been defined as a systematic, replicable. So on content analysis, it's just the same with literature search, wherein you need to be very systematic on looking on your research. Okay? Next, the best strategy for content analysis is one which starts with research question and decide on sampling strategy. Analyzing sentences or paragraphs using categories should help you on how to look on the best document evidence. Could develop emerging coding with the categories being formulated as the sources are explored, or there can be a priori coding based upon previous readings. It's just the same. See, there must be a background study. So, in line with the hard documents, you can look on 2005 to 2010 evidence, 2010 to 2015 evidence. Okay, so your evidences should be very recent. But then again, you can also look at those evidences from really older years, could serve also as a basis for you. Okay? Because again, that is a hard evidence. So, but could also involve such methods as counting the number of column inches devoted to a subject in a newspaper, or the number of photographs in a publication. So that would also be serving as your hard evidence. Lastly, for content analysis, the chosen sampling method is very important. It needs to be justified and replicable. It might be possible to study all the documents in a particular category, such as school newsletters or prospectuses, but in other cases, a sampling technique is needed. So, again, in content analysis, it's just the same with literature search. You need to be very systematic and you need to put on categories. Okay? So, as to avoid errors and really to maximize the time that you have on looking on hard evidences. So, for jumping from one library to the next, jumping from one government institution to the next just to provide you with hard evidences is really eating a lot or consuming a lot of your time. So please be very cautious. So that is why before you do your content analysis, be very systematic first on what you are looking for, and you need to have a category on what you are looking for as a hard evidence. So the next would be internal and external criticism. But then again, since we don't have any more time, that would be our next focus of discussion. That's all for today. Goodbye and thank you, class.